Story 1. Worlds Without Heroes. Asterisk static asterisk. Is it asterisk crackle asterisk? No, just turn it. The asterisk static asterisk pop asterisk KJ. Hello asterisk tap tap asterisk hello. There we go. Okay. Starting now. My name is Katie Johns, and the following testimony from Andrew Kirby is being recorded in an attempt to preserve our history and make sure a tragedy like this never has to befall another soul. Andrew, can you share with us the earliest memory you have of the event or those involved in it? A.K. I remember it like it was yesterday. Asterisk clears throat asterisk I was in car with my parents and my sister. Of course, we were in the back seat doing dumb things that kids do, counting how many of the same car were on the road, playing slug bug, you know. There weren't any confirmed sightings yet. The most we had were blurry pictures or videos so shaky that the most you saw was what someone could maybe argue was possibly a foot or a hand. But here we are, the four of us in our little car, and out of nowhere, this oncoming semi starts to drift into our lane. Damn thing doesn't even try to slow down. Instead, it seems to be accelerating. It's plowing through the cars in front of us, just about to collide. And then asterisk sniffle asterisk KJ. It's okay, Andrew, just take your time. AK. And then that's when I saw him. I had closed my eyes too, brace for impact, and when nothing happened, I opened them back up, and he was just there, floating in midair with the semi-hill effortlessly above his head. Asterisk crying asterisk, he was like something out of a comic book, cape flowing majestically in the wind, rippling muscles barely contained by the costume that covered them, a big symbol on his chest that must have been from some unknown language. Sure, his skin was a shade of red, his eyes were totally white, and he had a strange fin on his head instead of hair. But as a kid, you know a superhero when you see one. KJ. And then what happened? AK. What do you mean what happened? He smiled, set the semi down, and then flew away. He saved my day, and then went to save someone else's. The whole world knows what happened next. He kept saving the day. I still remember when he risked his life to stop a meteor from hitting the earth. We all thought it wiped him out, but of course we were wrong. I mean, it was foolish of us to think that a simple comet could take out Red Ultra. Asterisk chuckle asterisk. Yeah, the name seems a little xenophobic or racist, but he seemed to like it. Asterisk chuckle asterisk. And then, who could forget when he rounded you? All the nuclear weapons across the globe, took them right out of our galaxy, hurling them into a black hole, like something straight out of a superhero movie. Or what about how he exposed the Illuminati, while also providing the evidence that they had been behind all the terror attacks and wars as far back as written records go. On top of that, he helped us set up a one-world government that ended poverty, famine, and even inequality. And then when he was elected as president, he refused the position because it was not his place to rule us. It seems guess so long ago now. KJ, what were some of the biggest moments for you personally, the moments that really pushed him through to the status of superhero? AK, the biggest moment for me personally, Washington. Probably when he saved my family. But I think what really made me think of him as a full-blown, straight from the comics, bona fide superhero was when Jace Lincoln started his xenophobe terrorist grow up and declared war on him. The best comics always have a hero whose greatest enemy sprang up because of him, whether justified or not. To me, that was when I knew, throughout all of the times they fought, all the terrible things Jace did to try to defame or destroy him, Red never killed him, never even thought about it. He let our legal system do its thing. I think that's why he became me a hero to all of us. Why? Even though he didn't look like, we accepted him as one of us, asterisk, heavy sobbing, asterisk. KJ, I know this is difficult, Andrew. Are you able to continue, AK? Yeah, I'll be fine. Asterisk, sniffling asterisk, I think that's what makes today so hard. Remembering what we had and trying to come to terms with what has happened since. KJ, do you remember where you were the day it happened? The day we lost our hero, asterisk, whimper, asterisk, AK. Do I remember where I was the day we lost our hero? Asterisk, loud bang against wall, asterisk, we didn't lose him. He was taken from us, implying that we lost him, is placing the blame on the victim. He was stolen, his legacy shattered. Katie, I love you like a daughter, but fuck you for saying we lost him. Asterisk, loud banging on wall, asterisk, fast. Deep breaths, asterisk. KJ, Andrew, please. That's not what I meant, and you know that. This is hard for all of us. Asterisk, sniffle, asterisk, if you need a moment. That is fine. Just please answer the question when you are ready, AK. Yeah, Katie, I remember the day our hero was taken from us, asterisk, slow, deep inhale, asterisk, I had just gotten off work. I walked to my car and noticed an abnormal amount of police, firefighters, and EMTs driving by with their sirens blaring. The color of the sky was an unnatural orange. I drove home and didn't see a single civilian outside their homes. The people I did see were all huddled around their TVs watching the events unfold, though of course I wasn't aware of what events were unfolding yet. When I got home, I flipped on the news, and that's when I saw what everyone was so entranced by, asterisk, hard swallow, asterisk, hundreds of ships had descended on the earth, one for each capital city. Leaders had been taken hostage, along with the world president, and were rounded up in a field in the me to love England like cattle. Along the bottom of the screen, I saw a tagline continuously scrolling that red ultra missing, presumed dead. I was more frightened than I had ever been. And then we saw the creatures emerge from their ships, clad in metal armor and space helmets, asterisk, sobbing, asterisk. KJ, Andrew, before we continue, if Red Ultra was able to hear this, what would you like to say to him, AK? What would I like to say to him? Asterisk, slow deep breaths, asterisk, Red Ultra. If you're out there, fuck you. How could you do this to us? You were our hero. We saw why you risk your life for us. You taught us how to exist with those we don't understand, and even those we once feared. You united us under your banner of heroism. But on the day we needed you the most, asterisk, rapid B, breaths slowly becoming slow deep breaths, asterisk. KJ, go on, Andrew. What happened when we needed him the most? AK, he flew down out of the sky the way he always did. Right at the last second, he-s, teared down the invaders, sobbing, and then he knelt. The invaders took off their helmets, and, to the horror of the world, they all looked just like him, the same species, and then we all sat and watched as he used his strength, his speed, and every other power he once used to save us. Pause, to break us. He went through and proceeded to skin, immolate, electrocute, dismember, disembowel, and shatter every single leader we had. Then he casually walked into one of the ships and came back out with Chase Lincoln bound and gagged. Long pause, that's when we realized had every word Jace said was true. Every transmission between Red and his superiors, every blurry photo of clandestine meetings, every radar reading showing ships surrounding the Earth, every bit of evidence he found that pointed to the catastrophes being created by an outside force or that the meteor never even existed. All of it was true. Long silent pause, then we saw Red pull Jace's head from his body and crush it beneath his heel. Slight crying heard from both KJ, I'm sorry to make you relive this, Andrew. I know it's hard, but you're one of the last among us who remembers how this all started, AK. I know, and that's why it has to be done. For the last 30 years, they have harvested our planet to the point that there is nothing left. And then about a year ago, they all just flew away. Our world is falling apart. We're all just waiting on one more natural disaster to wipe us out. We have compiled evidence that suggests that this isn't the first place, and that they have done this too, or even the first universe, and my guess is we won't be the last. But if we can get this message out before the last of our radio towers' power plants collapse, then maybe we can save another world from sharing our fate. KJ, we were able to get some readings from their ship as they left, showing that they are able to resonate at various frequencies, possibly allowing him to shift between dimensions. After spending the last year doing various tests, we have found a way to send this through to various frequencies at once, as well as encoding a written version within the waves that will be transcribed by me following this recording. We have no clue how it will reach you or when, but hopefully someone out there will receive this while there is still a chance. AK, we believe we may have been warned of this once before, but none of us saw the truth in the message. Please, if you are hearing this, reading this, or have received this in any format at all, and take anything away from this message, take away this: the redskin, white-eyed visitor is not there to save you. He is there to make sure you belong to a world without heroes. Revelation 13:3, and I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. Learn from U.S. Story 2. Daddy's little angel. She has her mother's bright blue eyes. Daddy's little angel does. And the most beautiful smile you've ever seen. She could melt an iceberg. She could. Everyone that knows her just loves her to death, and I'm so proud to call myself her father. She's a gift from above, I know it, which is why I must protect her, no matter what the cost. Some people just don't understand. It all started a couple of weeks ago. Some nasty little girl was teasing Katie, my little angel, and she just wouldn't leave her alone. She was saying nasty things, saying how poor she was and saying she was dirty and such. She just had the filthiest mouth. Little girls shouldn't be so nasty. Well, she followed Katy home at day, throwing dirt at her and telling her to take a bath in it. Well, my Katy showed her what's what. Yes, she did. And Daddy couldn't be more proud. I don't think anyone should hurt a child, even if they don't mean it. Don't get me wrong, but Katy never did anything to anyone, and I love her to death. You've gotta understand, I was only being a loving father when I hid the body. You see, we live in a very rural area, and that nasty out little girl clearly had no business following my Katy in the first place. But I know no one would understand, and I just can't let anything happen to my little angel. Of course, when my wife came home and saw that our little girl had a few bruises, can you believe she actually glared at me as if I'd ever so much as think of hurting my little angel? Of course, I was upset, but the sweetheart that she is, Katy set her own track sure enough. She told her how the filthy little girl harassed her and wouldn't leave her be. And I tell you, that lit my wife right up. She was so angry, I had to restrain her. She was going to call her parents then and there. It was 9 in the evening. Well, I finally talked her down, even though she was furious with me that I hadn't handled it sooner. Of course, by then she just didn't trust me to settle it no matter what I told her. I said I'd do it first thing after work the next day, but no, she insisted she'd lines them herself the next day. Even Katy pleaded with her not to call her parents. She said she'd be so embarrassed at school if everyone found out. She'd run home and told Mommy. Of course, we both knew we couldn't explain that the filthy little girl had gone missing after their little scuffle. Now could we? I mean, she's my wife and I loved her, but she just wouldn't understand. But she just set Katy straight to bed and wouldn't hear another word from me on the matter. Her mind was made up, and she's a very headstrong woman. It's part of her charm, you see, so there's no arguing. Gee, with her, once she's made up her mind on a matter, well, after that I went to tuck the little angel in and read her a bedtime story, and she begged me not to let Mommy call the filthy girl's parents, but I told her how persistent Mommy is, and that she wouldn't listen to Emmy. Of course, that didn't sit well with Katy at all. She knew that Mommy wouldn't understand, and neither would her schoolmate's Mommy. No, especially not her. I told Katy I would think of something, and I promised that I wouldn't let anything happen to her. But Daddy's little angel is clever. Daddy's little angel already had her mind made up. I should 'a' understood. The next day I came home to see my wife lying at the bottom of the stairs in a crumpled, bloody heap. There was so much blood, and it had long since dried into tea carpet when I got home. She had never made it to work that morning. The official story was that she had taken a nasty fall down the stairs and cracked her head open like an egg on her tumble. But as I look into Katy's eyes, so empty, so emotionless, no, Daddy's little angel did not hurt anyone that didn't try to hurt her first. She's special. Anyhow, there was a funeral and the whole family showed up. Katy couldn't have been more bored. She just sat there staring into nothingness as the eulogy was given. When it came time to view the corpse, she barely gave it a glance. I like to think she's coping with the loss in her own way. Daddy's little angel loved her mommy more than anything. It was just before the burial the next day that an investigator showed up at the DOR. It was Katie that answered as I was rushing to get ready. I rushed to the door as this man was questioning my little girl, gently scooted Katie out of the way, and stepped up to the door. "May I help you?" I asked, trying to sound polite. "I need to ask you some questions about the circumstances of your wife's death," the investigator said. "Who are you?" I think some of my frustration was coming through, but it might have been my self-consciousness. "I'm sorry," he said with a laugh. "Detective Kimball, local PD. I just got the results back from the autopsy, and the blunt trauma your wife suffered and the bloodstains found on the carpet don't exactly match up. I was wondering if you could give me a little more insight." "Well, I'd love to, Detective, but as I told the responding officers, I only found the body when I came home from work. I wasn't here to see it happen." The detective tried to speak again, I think, but I cut him off. Frustration was filling me. "If you'll excuse me, we have a burial to attend." I grabbed Katie's hand and walked her out the door, locking it behind me. I glanced back to see that the detective was watching me as we drove away. Katie was silent the entire trip there and back, and as soon as we got home she retreated to her room. "The poor baby has it so rough, all this death surrounding her." I shampooed the sea, our pet, the best I could to get the stains out, and fixed up dinner for us. We ate in silence, and it filled me with pain to see your suffering. I'll never forget, just before she got up to take her plate to the sink, she looked at me and smiled so softly. "Oh, my little angel has the sweetest smile you ever did see." A couple of days passed, and I thought things were getting back to normal. Well, as normal as they could be without my beautiful wife to come home. When it happened, you see, I rush home each day to meet Katie as she's coming in from school. But yesterday I was lost in thought and took my time getting home. You see, the day before my wife's sister suggested that she come over and bring Katie's cousin to visit, and I couldn't refuse, so I had to get in the mindset. I had to show her we were coping. The house was quiet when I got there, but that wasn't so unusual, as Daddy's little angel tends to keep to herself and spends most of her time in her room playing with her dollhouse. She's always so clean and always so quiet. I couldn't have asked for a better little girl. I walked up to check Katie's room, and it was empty. I then proceeded to check the rest of the house and found her nowhere until I came to the door leading to the cellar. Odd, it was cracked. I pushed it open and started down the stairs. I could see the light spilling across the floor at the bottom of the staircase, illuminating a small puddle of blood just a foot from the bottom step. "Just hand me the gun," a voice said softly. "I'll get you out of here, take you somewhere safe." I rushed down the stairs and found Katie standing a mere 2 feet away from Detective Kimball, who sat bound with rope and bleeding from the head. I approached my daughter and eased the gun from her hands as the detective seemed to eye me with the most dreadful gaze anyone's ever given me in my life. I took the gun in my hands, and Dee was surprised at how natural it felt. Though I'd never held a gun in my life, the exhilaration that filled me as I lifted the gun and watched the detective's face contort in horror almost sickened me. "Why have you come?" I asked him as I aimed the gun at his head. "Your wife's death was not an accident," he replied. "I was at work when it happened, and Katie was at school. It's been deemed an accident." "What did you hope to find here?" The coroner stated that she died in the early morning, around the same time you leave for work. "I loved my wife unconsciously," I began to pull the hammer back. "If you kill me, the police will know where to look," Kimball pleaded. "There's no way out of this. Do the right thing. Do it for your little girl." If only why, who understood, I put a bullet in his head. It's all I could do, of course. I knew he was right. I knew the cops would come soon, looking for him. I turned to my girl. She stood staring at Kimball vacantly, and I told her to run and get the tarp from the corner. She did. Daddy's little angel is so good. She even helped me wrap the body. And I carved. My sister-in-law showed up that night with her husband and kid as she said she would, and dinner was ready by 8:30. I really think they loved it, my new recipe. I think they'll be back for more. Story 3. A bump in the night. Ida listened silently to the long and terrible creak that echoed through the silence of the night. It was far past his bedtime. The light-up Spider-Man clock mounted on the wall displaying the numbers 10 o'clock. Ida was supposed to have been asleep 2 hours ago. His mother would have been furious if she knew that he was still awake, but he couldn't help it. Ida kept hearing strange and frightening sounds throughout the house, and he knew he wouldn't be able to fall asleep even if he tried. He was scared that if he closed his eyes, even for just a moment, whatever creature was making the scraping sounds on the hardwood floor upstairs would slip into his bedroom without him noticing and begin to bite at his face before he had a chance to call out for his mother. That's what happened to the little boy in the movie his brother showed him anyway. His older brother, Wesley, had allowed Ida to watch a scary movie with him while he was babysitting until their mother got back, but only on tea. He conditioned that Ida would mention nothing about the movie to their mother. In the movie, a little 6-year-old boy, only a year older than Ida, had been sure there was a terrible monster lurking through the house. When the monster began to open his bedroom door, the little boy hid his face under the covers, and before he even got a chance to call out for his parents, the monster had leapt onto him and began to gnaw at his face. Ida didn't want that to happen to him. He would be in enough trouble as it was, having both stayed up late and watched an off-limits move. But what if there really was a monster in the house? What if the footsteps he heard upstairs in the kitchen was the monster from the movie? It was searching the house for him since he had broken the rules. He knew it. Ida stared at his door handle in terror. He could swear. In the almost overwhelming dark of the room, he could see the doorknob turn ever so slightly. His heart hammered in his chest. No, he thought to himself. Noah would have barked. Noah was the family husky. They had gotten the dog as a new companion for him and Wesley. But Ida knew the real reason they had gotten Noah was to distract the two of them. When their dad left, a new fear crept up from the darkest corners of his mind. What if the monster had already gotten Noah? What if when Ida ran upstairs to the safety of his mother's arms, he would find Noah's bloody carcass in the hallway? What if when he found Noah, his stomach had been ripped open, and the monster laid eggs in his chest cavity just like it did in the movie to the little boy's face. A loud crash sounded from upstairs, and Ida violently jerked in his bed. The edges of his fingers tingled, and his palms began to sweat. He was sure that the monster was in the house now. "What do I do? What do I do?" his tiny little voice echoed in his head. Mom's room is all the way upstairs on the second floor. He thought about sneaking out of his room to get Wesleyan first and then Mom. But what if Mom died before they could get to her? Ida decided that Wesleyan was smart enough to hide while Ida went to go get your mother. After all, once he got to his mother, he was sure she could save them both from the terrible creature. She wasn't scared to confront the monsters in Ida's closet or underage his bed. Surely she could best the beast lurking in the shadows of their home. Never taking his eyes off the door handle, he slowly pulled aside the blue and red Spider-Man-themed covers to his race car bed and carefully stepped onto the floor. His thick, curly, near black hair fell into his face, blocking the left side of the room from his molten brown eyes. Yet another thought slithered its way into Ida's head. What if when Ida next looked in the mirror, the next time Ida made eye contact with his reflection, his eyes turned into that of the monster would reach through the glass and pull Ida into hell with it. Ida would be left to suffer forever, alone, terrified, and burning in the flames of the dam. That wasn't what happened in the movie, but Ida was smart enough to know that not everything in the movie was true. He picked up his silver and blue sword he had gotten from Santa's workshop and held it tightly. In his other hand, he ripped his blue and green Oswald the octopus flashlight. He had made a deal with himself that he would only use the flashlight when he really needed to. He needed to be extra careful in order to keep the monster from finding him. Ida thought about what would happen if the monster was outside his door. He imagined peeking out from the crack in his door and seeing nothing at first. He would turn on his flashlight and the small golden beam illuminate the pale, doll-like face of the monster with fresh blood acting as her bright red lipstick. He imagined the woman shoving her long sword-like nails straight through his stomach and began to eat into his throat while he was still alive. She would mimic his voice and call out to Wesleyan to lure him out of his room once Ida was dead. That Washington wasn't in the movie either. But Ida knew that monsters were cleverer than they seemed. That's what his friend at school told him anyways. His friend had told Ida that once you began to think about monsters, the monsters knew, and you'd draw them to you like a magnet. That struck a special kind of fear within Ida that made him grip the sides of his Thomas the Train pajamas. The monster already knows I'm here. Ida let out a small sob. A ball grew in his throat, and the pain of stifling back tears swelled in his chest. He slowly opened the door to his room. He slipped out into the suffocating darkness of the house, not daring to breathe for fear of disturbing the now eerily quiet slumber of the house. He had to help himself move one foot after the other down the hallway towards the stairs to the living room. Each gentle crunch of his feet against the soft carpet provoked the tears resting at the edge of his water line. Each step took what felt to Ida an hour to move on as he tried to avoid the creaking sound of the wood beneath his feet. His worst fears came true as a black figure crossed the stairway in a brief flash. He didn't see it, but Ida was sure it was at least 8 feet tall, that the figure had for arms, horns curling back out of its skull, and long flowing raven black veil of hair that it would shove down his throat as he tried to scream. Hot tears slipped quietly down his face, his heart thundered in his chest, slamming against his ribs to break free from his body. Panic caused his breath. It turned into short sobs that slowly crawled their way up from his throat into small hiccups of fear. Ida knew he had to move now, and he had to move fast, otherwise he'd die. Before he even knew he had commanded it, his tiny bare feet were flying through the house. With him in tow, he flicked on his Oswald the octopus flashlight. The beam was slicing through the dark in a panic flurry to clear the way for Ida as he leapt up the rest of the stairs and barreled over anything in his way. Behind him he could hear the footsteps of the monster running after him. Now aware of its next meal, the loud thundering booms of its feet pounded behind him, faster and faster, closer and closer. "Mommy!" Ida screeched out into the dark, his words finally breaking free of the dam built up in his throat. He could hear the creature behind him call out his name over and over again, commanding him to come back in shrill squawks. As he passed by Noah's bed, he swore he saw the brief crimson gleam as his flashlight's gaze briefly danced over the dog's corpse. Hot rivers bumped themselves down his face, the salty taste worming its way in between his lips to the safety of his tongue, like they, too, were running for refuge. The dark creature, a horrible contraction, loose flaps of skin and writhing tendrils, scooped him up into its arms, squeezing him close to itself like a python. "Its prey, Ida," it squawked again. "Ida, come do." Ida's elbow collided with its face in a desperate effort to escape. The demon dropped him, and Ida darted behind his maimed fort of blankets and pillows, the makeshift shelter giving him lee against the wrath of the monster storming towards him. A pale hand wrapped itself around the edge of the blanket Ida's grandmother had given him last Christmas, and hurled the blanket back behind it, revealing itself to Ida as the beam of his flashlight landed on its prepossessing features. Ida's mother stood, bottom lip bleeding from where he had struck her, arms crossed in front of him. Her long and curled auburn hair draped itself around her shoulders, much like her satin robe, it around the rest of her. Her hazel eyes were ablaze with both fury and distress for her son. "Ida, what the hell are you doing?" she yelled, her voice sounding more like a croak because of her bad cough. A cough had made her lose her voice, and she sounded very different because of it. Ida's lip quivered as he rushed into his mother's arms, wrapping his tiny legs around her waist as she hoisted him up to cry on her shoulder. She rubbed his back to try and ease his perturbation. Noah trotted around the corner, his blood-red color standing out against his snow-white pelt in the dark surrounding them. "What's the matter?" Ida could do nothing more than simply hiccup out the words, "I had a bad dream." Story 4. How to talk to yourself. The first thing you should know about me is that I'm very faint of heart. There's a pamphlet I've been looking for a while now. I remember coming across it a while ago while I was a child. I was at the doctor's office, the waiting room, getting a physical. The year was 2002. I was born in 1996. That's when I saw it. Strewn within the other celebrity or glamour magazines, it peeked out with one single gray corner. It was almost Lee. Cat was looking at me. I picked it up and read the title, How to Talk to Yourself, by a man named Roger Harrison. There was no graphic, just the white background and the Arial font reading T. He title and the author. To this day, I've never been able to find out who the mysterious Roger Harrison was. I spent countless hours on the internet browsing for anyone to remotely match my quarry. Last week I found a tattered piece of paper plastered to a sour grate, colors running from the recent rain. I picked it up and I read the title. It was the very same pamphlet from my childhood, the one I remember so very clearly on that one day in the waiting room. How to Talk to Yourself. I quickly stuffed it in my bag. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, the feeling you get when you're being watched. I was in a crowded square in the middle of a city. Surely it was a coincidence. I continued home, attempting to forget the pamphlet that was lying in my bag. Perhaps I'd save it as a bit of memorabilia. Perhaps I'd trash it. I walked a little faster now. I was on a sidewalk near the outskirts of the city. I live in a small, yellowing apartment in what you could call the fringes of the city. The building is gray and covered in ivy. I arrived at my building. I slid my key into the lock and opened the door with a creak. I felt the sudden urge to read this pamphlet. I brushed it off. With every step I took up the stairs, I could feel this sensation building more and more until I eventually could not take it any more and broke into a sprint to my apartment. I opened the door, took off my backpack, and grabbed the pamphlet out. The feeling of being watched had subsided now, me being safe in my own. When home, my neighbors were playing loud music in the room above me. The urge to read the pamphlet remained. My curiosity must have been getting the better of me. I slowly put the pamphlet down, almost reconsidering my decision, but instead decided to leave it on my kitchen table. I went into my bedroom and slid into my covers. The time was about 10:47 as I drifted off into a deep sleep. That night I had a strange dream. I was in a large field. The sky was gray and the grass was yellow and tall. I felt cold. The surroundings were desolate and foreboding. As I inspected the surroundings, I realized that this dream was incredibly vivid compared to most other dreams I have. As my eyes scanned the horizon, I spotted something out the corner of my eye, almost indistinguishable, but yet I could see every movement from afar. In the distance, I could see someone. They were entirely draped in a sickly shade of green. Whoever it may have been, they were twitching almost uncontrollably. I attempted to move towards them, but it felt like my feet were stuck in something soft and something warm. Gelatin, Vaseline. I heard a rustling behind me, a twig snapping. I whipped around, and the dream went to black. The rest of the night I had no dreams, and I woke up shivering, feeling strange. I brushed it off as a side effect of the odd dream. I dressed myself and brushed my teeth. I looked in the mirror. My skin was paler than I've ever seen. It looked as though all my blood had been drained from my body, leaving only the white skin. I walked into the kitchen, and I saw it, the gray paper with its running colors, still looking at me. I was suddenly very cold. The same cold from the dream. I was intimidated. I was intimidated by a piece of paper. I don't know why. It was just so ominous and strange. I had never felt this way about a piece of paper. I decided to pick it up. I touched the pamphlet. It was ice cold. I opened T and read, "You have a special somebody who lives in your lungs. They like you, but they are shy. They only come out when you are alone. Here's how to talk to them. Step 1. Breathe deeply. Say hi. You are not afraid, are you? They like you. You don't have to be afraid. You won't hurt, I promise. We are smiling at you." I was confused. Say hi to the person in my lungs. Why are they living in my lungs? I won't hurt. Who's smiling at me? It was silent, completely silent. I decided to do as the pamphlet said. I inhaled deeply and said hi softly. Nothing happened. I decided to put the pamphlet away and save the rest of the reading for after work. I walked to work. My co-workers were silent, as they usually are, but instead of the typing of computers or movement of machines, there was nothing, absolute, dead silence, the kind of silence that makes you go mad. It was deafening. I hastily finished my work and left the building to get a cup of coffee. I arrived home about an hour later. It was now 9:24. The pamphlet lay open on the table, tempting me to continue reading it. I gave in to my temptations and picked it up and read Step 2. Be cold. Don't go to sleep. Not yet. They want to see your eyes. Take 1 tablespoon of the oil. Eat it. Shut your eyes. Don't yell. Don't scream. Don't. The rest of this section was undecipherable. The ink that it was written in was smudge. The second section, as expected, was equally as strange, if not stranger, than the first section. Questions ran through my mind. The oil. What oil was the pamphlet talking about? This was the part that confused me the most, alongside the part that was smudged by the rain. I expected it would be some sort of brood oil with a recipe for it. I had no idea where to start looking for the oil. Perhaps there was explanation in the next step, I pondered. Step 3. Happy, happy, faffy. Be happy. Start talking. Say how you are. You want to make them happy. You are happy. We like to happy with you. As I thought, there wasn't any inkling as to what the all could be. It seemed that the author, whoever he or she was almost completely losing his sanity at this point. This obsession with almost chilling happiness was starting to freak me out, and I closed the pamphlet and headed upstairs to my bedroom. I go. Tea underneath the covers, and my head hit the pillow. I had the same dream I had last night. The only difference was that the man in green was closer. He was much, much closer. I woke up promptly. Why in a cold sweat at 3:27 a.m. and couldn't bring myself back to sleep. I had the sudden urge to go downstairs and read the pamphlet. I saw the pamphlet on the table, but something was off. Everything on my desk was very organized, and I saw a small envelope on my desk. I rushed towards it and ripped it open. Inside was a napkin with a crude smiley face scrawled hastily onto it. I remember specifically at this point the gravity of my situation. I had no recollection of making this note. There were no signs of a break-in. As far as I could tell, the beats in my heart began to all move faster and faster as I approached the pamphlet. I opened it, and on the first 3 steps, there was the same crude smiley face scribbled all over. I caught my breath and held it for a moment before breathing out with a wheeze. I was, at this point, terrified. The questions rushed through my head. Who the fuck was the man in green? And more importantly, How did all these smilers get I? At my apartment, I began to read the 4 step. Step 4. Do you see them? Look. I was beyond scared at this point. Look at WHAT. I was confused, and I was terrified of the monstrosity I had brought into my home, hands shaking. I read the next step. There only had to be a few left, right? Step 5. They will say, hi, you have made a friend, you are not all. 1. You are never alone. My main question at this point was who would say hi. Nobody was inside my apartment, as far as I knew. My heart was beating at 1,000,000 miles an hour, fumbling with the P. Ages, I turned to the next and final step, which was not really a step, but more of a statement. Final step. You're never without your happy friend in your lung. You can ask. Leap now without waking up. The author's obsession with happiness was almost cruel to the reader. It was haunting the way whoever wrote this put it. Somehow my heart beat faster, and Jay felt woe. Ozzy, I was confused, terrified and alone. The last thing I remember before blacking out was a raspy breathing behind me. I woke up 2 days later in my bed. Had it been a dream, the paper was nowhere in sight. I walked down to the kitchen, and my eyes lit upon the paper. It had been real. My heart sank. The sun was setting. Rubbing my bleary eyes, I picked up the paper and turned to the back. Scrawled on the back of the pamphlet was the following: never alone, never alone, never alone, they're here, never alone, I don't like this, and not alone, I like you, I can see you little friend, I want to touch you now, wet me, see you, I like you, am gonna feel all of your little insides, my very special friend. Underneath the inscription, there was a smiley face, and from behind me I heard a raspy, shallow voice. Hi. Story 5, Chatrooma. It was the summer of 2019. The 16-year-old Thomas Mitchell and his family went on a trip to their cabin in the Stillwater State Forest of Montana. He had 2 younger brothers, Felix, who was 10, and Michael, who had just turned 14. They usually spend their time hiking and visiting nearby places during the day and playing with their Nintendos in the evening. Night. There wasn't any Wi-Fi in the cabin due to the fact that Thomas's parents wanted the 2 weeks to be free of social media and more focused on family and nature. This, however, didn't mean that they couldn't bring their old Nintendos with them to do something in the evening. Their cabin was rather old-fashioned, with it being built in the 1960s, and the fact that there hasn't been any form of renovation since then. Thomas's great-grandfather built it all by himself, and his family was very proud of that. Thomas and his family lived in Seattle, so it was quite a long drive to their cabin. They left early in the morning, and after a few hours, Thomas's brother, Felix, had to go to the toilet, so they stopped at a local gas station. The rest of the family also thought it was a good opportunity to get some snacks and to get ready for the rest of the drive. When they arrived, it was already about 11 a.m. in the morning, and the parking lot was pretty busy. All 5 got out of the car. Thomas's dad, Scott Mitchell, filled the car with gasoline while Vivian Jones, Thomas's mom, took the 3 kids to the shop, which was pretty busy. Thomas and Michael went straight to the snacks, and Felix ran towards the restrooms. Vivian waited at the restrooms to take Felix to the snacks, where his 2 older brothers were waiting for him. When she heard that a random man was asking him questions, Vivian gasped. "Felix, what are you doing? Stop talking to strangers," she yelled. Felix quit talking to the random man immediately and walked towards his mom. Thomas's mom was annoyed, but also relieved, and took this out on his youngest brother, Thomas, and Michael chuckled. They were both shocked and also kind of entertained, all fool, or didn't think much of it. Got their snacks, paid for them, and went back to the car. When Vivian told Scott about what happened, he was also shocked, but emphasized that nothing bad had happened, and that everything was all right. And so they went back on their way to their destination. The moment they arrived, it was already 5 p.m., and Scott understood that he had to gather firewood, in case it was going to be a cold night. An exact week had passed. The family had forgotten about the small incident during the trip, and everyone was home from a long and exhausting day hiking at a local wildlife park. It was an evening like every else. Dinner, 7 p.m., then TV until 11 p.m., and everyone went to bed. However, the three had arranged a late-night chat with each other when their parents were asleep. How, you might ask? Well, through the Nintendo's old-fashioned chat rooms. They all agreed to meet at around 11:30 p.m. in chat room D, and so why did Thomas, a.k.a. Thoma 2002, Felix, a.k.a. Flying Bat, and Michael, a.k.a. M1C for 3L, were all three in chat room D. The range of said chat rooms is approximately 65 feet, and that was enough range for all three, given that the cabin was about half of that in length. Everyone had a separate room. They all slept in rooms that were connected to each other through one long hallway, which on its turn was connected to the living room and the open kitchen. There was only one door, the front door, which connected the terrace to the living room. See, the cabin was on the top of a hill, which was about 55 feet long. The hallway consisted of 5 doors. First came the bathroom on the right side, then Thomas's room on the right side, next to the bathroom. Thirdly, Scott and Vivian's bedroom on the left side, and lastly, Felix's bedroom at the right side. Across, Michael's bedroom on the left side. An hour into chatting, Thomas heard a branch snap outside. He looked up at the one window in his old-fashioned room. Probably just the wind, or some animal, he thought to himself. As Michael was typing, Thomas was going through the things he had done and seen today: the ice cream he ate with his family, the bear he saw, the try. Another branch snapped. Shoot! Thomas's window was wide open, with a fly screen separating him and the outside world. He hearted because he's the only one that always leaves his window open at night. Michael had sent a message. Guys, did you see that there's someone in chat room? Thomas frowned. That's not possible. We're so remote. We only have to neighbors down the street, and they're at least 100 feet away. It's probably just a bug. These things are at least 6 years old now. This thought raced through his mind. He also translated this into a message and sent it to his 2 brothers. Yeah, I agree with Thomas. It's probably just a bug or something, said Felix. Michael responded, why? TH is short. Are you sure? Which made the other 2 doubt. Thomas went to check if there was still someone else in chat room A, and sure enough, there still was someone else lurking around. Should we check it out? Said Thomas. I don't want to get into trouble. Felix responded shortly. He continued, besides, tomorrow "'S a big day. Let's cut this short and go to sleep." It was a stupid idea anyway. Fine. Go to sleep. But I want to figure this out. "Good night," Michael responded. Felix said good night to both of his older brothers, closed his Nintendo, and went to sleep. "So what do we do now?" Thomas responded. "Let's go to chat room and try to make contact," Michael quickly said. After a few minutes, Thomas said, "Are you sure that that's a good idea?" Michael sent a drawn picture of emoji that pictured a face with rolling eyes. Directly after that, he responded with "Pussy" and left the chat. Thomas's heart was racing. He was becoming uneasy. What if it is a real person? This means that that person is really, really closer than 65 feet. He thought to himself. He figured that his parents were probably already asleep and slowly walked down the hallway towards Michael's room. Thomas knocked. "Come in," said Michael. "What the hell are you thinking? This isn't a game. This person can be close to us, really close," Thomas yelled. "Shh. Could you keep it down? Or do you want to wake Mom and Dad?" Michael protested. Thomas rolled his eyes. "You're going to bring us all into a dangerous U.S. situation when you don't stop immediately." But Thomas was already too late. Michael was already talking to the random stranger whose nickname was Herano. Thomas saw Michael scream. "Are you out of your mind? He could literally be 10 feet away from us." The stranger had only sent a few cryptic messages like, "Nighttime is coming, and the forest canopy is getting thicker and thicker for you." Suddenly, they could hear loud banging coming from the windows of the living room. Both of them froze in fear, terrified for what could happen next. "I warned you that this would happen," said Thomas. Michael didn't say anything. He was completely shocked. He closed the chat and powered his Nintendo off. Let's remain calm," said Michael, as Thomas was taking his anger out on his younger brother. Michael was getting tears in his eyes, but couldn't cry because he was frozen in fear and was shocked. Thomas couldn't stand it anymore. He quietly went to the living room. He stopped when he had reached the windows with the curtains closed. As he could feel his heartbeat, he slowly pulled away one curtain. The window was smeared with a dark substance. It was hard to make out shapes and colors at first, but as his eyes adapted to the combination darkness and moonlight, it quickly became clear what substance this was. It was lewd, bloody hand marks were made all over the window. Thomas was disgusted and terrified, but as always he was curious about who or what did this. He put on his raincoat, grabbed a sharp kitchen knife, put on his shoes, and slowly opened the door. When the door was finally open, the frisky air slammed into his face. The only thing he could hear was crickets and the sound of rustling in the bushes down the densely overgrown hill. The viewing platform was clear. Thomas was trying to keep up with his heartbeat, trying to slow it down, but he couldn't when he saw that the small fence gate was opened and was no longer open. He went back inside to grab an electric torch and got back outside to finally close the door behind him. He tried to intimidate the intruder by shouting, "Get the hell away, I will call the police. This is our land," but he could barely yell. He was so scared that you could hear it in his voice. After a few minutes of nothing, he was now at the top of the hill. He had walked all the way down to the place where the car was parked. Even more uncertain than before, he yelled, hello, he could hear an almost unnatural scream, but not a scream like you'd imagine. It was an almost growl-like scream. Thomas was completely freaked out now. He turned around and went back towards the house. He could hear rustling behind him and knew that it was probably already too late. Was this it? Is this how I meet my fate? Thomas was thinking about unimaginably painful ways to die. Then he sprinted toward the terrace of the house and closed the small and low gate. When he had reached the point where he thought he was safe, as he was trying to calm himself down, he could feel a sudden and hard hit on the back of his neck. Bam! Everything slows down and fades to black. Darkness. Story 6. The Mailman. It all started as a message in my mailbox one morning. Having my morning coffee and cigarette, I decided to walk out to the mailbox and check my mail. I had bought this house from an auction for a very low price. It was out in the quiet country. I, being a city kid, had no idea what count real life was like until I had made a few friends around the area. With the purchase of the house came 100 acres of crop land that, in the autumn, blossomed into golden produce that swayed beautifully in the wind. I put on my shoes and headed out to the road, still slightly groggy. Upon opening the mailbox, I found a dead bird inside. At first, I thought it was some stupid kids playing pranks again. Last week, they decided to toilet paper my lawn. I pulled the dead bird out and threw it on the ground. It was mangled to a pulp, almost as if a dog had gotten a hold of it. Besides the bird, there was nothing inside of the mailbox. I started to think that maybe the kids had stolen my mail, but eventually I brushed it off and told myself I'd get up early in the morning, and watch the mail come so I could catch the jerks in the act. The next morning arrived and the mailman came as usual. I walked out and got my mail, not thinking anything of it. The next morning was the same. The next week came and I walked out to get my mail once again. This time I was horrified at the sight. My white mailbox had blood smeared all over it. I opened the mailbox cautiously. Inside was a mangled cat. I gasped and covered my mouth, quickly choking back the vomit rising to my throat. I rushed to my garage, put on a pair of gloves, and pulled the poor animal out. Stapled T. Oh, it was a note, fairly legible, but crude nonetheless. On the note was a simple, smiley face. I was disgusted at that. Whoever did it thought it was funny. I gave the cat a proper burial and continued with my day. The next morning I woke up around 5:00 a.m., walked out, and checked my mailbox again to see if it had been tampered with. The cat I had just buried in my backyard was stuffed inside yet again, this time another note attached to it. This one had a frowning face, and under it, which read, "You don't like my present." Pissed off and finally fed up, I decided to bury it yet again and to stay up all night to watch my mailbox to find out who was doing this. The time rolled by -12 a.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m., nothing at all. Then, at 3 a.m., I finally saw movement across the road, and out of the cornfield there came a figure into my yard. I watched it until it finally came under the security light I have in the middle of my yard. What I saw, I cannot begin to explain. It was a man, or at least I think it was. It was hunched over, like an old man, with long gangly arms that went farther than the average human, and its head bent downwards as if it was looking for something. T had dropped on the ground. The man, or rather thing, looked frail and weak, but it moved with great speed. I quickly and quietly moved to the back window and peered out as I saw it dig up the sea. At once again, and hold it in its arms, it stroked the cat, as if it were alive, and quickly hurried around to the front of my house. I scurried back to the front window again and watched as it made its way to my mailbox and once more put the cat inside before disappearing into the darkness. That day I didn't leave my house. I was too shocked of what happened. I slept a bit, then decided to take a trip to the store. When I came back, I checked the mailbox again, and there it was, the same cat I just buried. I went to take the dead cat out of my mailbox once again and bury it in a different spot, then decided to stay up again that night so as to see what happened. With a flashlight in hand, I watched out of my front window and saw the long, spindly man come out of tea. He wheeled and jogged into my yard, to the spot where I just buried the cat that day, and started to dig it up with his hands. I slid open the sliding glass door and stepped outside, turning on the flashlight. HT, I aimed it at the man and yelled, "What the heck are you doing?" The man turned around to face me, and that's when I saw the thing for the first time, in plain sight. Its body, why, looked like it had been mauled by a bear, its clothes ripped, rotting skin showing through, its teeth completely exposed and jagged, and the eyes sunken in. I quickly ran back inside as it gave a shrieking so, and hopped over in my direction. I slid the glass door shut and locked it, and grabbed the pistol I had bought for self-defense from under my couch. Loading a bullet into the CH hammer, I shined the light at the door and waited. A glob of something hid the glass door, and I instinctively shot a bullet, which found its mark inside of my wall. I walked to the glass door and shined the light down to see what it was. A mess of entrails were scattered across the bottom, and blood smeared across the glass. Sick to my stomach, I choked back the vomit that was rising. Gee, for my stomach, I quickly rushed back to the couch that was against the wall and sat there with my eyes fixed upon the glass door, my flashlight off. Outside, I could see the moonlight through the gruesome mess that was plastered upon the glass. I saw a figure approach the door and stared, and as its hands smeared the blood across the window. I was frozen with fear, waiting for it to break the glass and try to take my life from me. After smearing the blood, it turned around and walked away. I swear I could hear a faint chuckle like a smoker's lungs laugh, but in a way that emphasized the rasp of deteriorating breaths. I sat in the sofa and didn't budge. I don't know how long I waited, but after a while the room became light as the sun rose in the sky. I looked around the house. Everything was so quiet, then fixed my eyes on the glass door. Smeared across it were handprints with unusually long fingers, and a smiley, the same one on the letter. I sighed and tried to make myself comfortable, laying down and resting my eyes, but still remaining as alert as possible. A few hours later, I awoke from a nightmare and propped myself up on the couch. After a short while, I got up and prepared to clean away the aftermath of last night's encounter. I was apparently pissing or whatever it was off, and I was getting more scared by He's second just thinking of whatever was out there, lurking. I cleaned the entrails off the ground and went out to check my mail. Then I came across a plain letter Curious, I opened it up and felt a chill shoot up my spine. The letter had no words, only a smile, the same crude smile that was on the letter stapled to the cat and on my sliding glass door. I quickly crumbled it up and tossed it on the ground. I left that night. I went to stay with my parents up in the city for a few weeks, not explaining my situation to them. I simply told them that I had been sick of country life and need a change. For a few weeks they happily let me in. When I returned to my home 3 weeks later, horror was stricken across my face, for my house was not as I left it. As soon as I walked and the stench of rotting carcass hit my nostrils, and I vomited on the floor, covering my nose with my shirt. I proceeded to the light switch. Turning on the light made me shriek in terror. Scattered throughout my house were entrails and carcasses of dead animals. Some were propped up like humans on my couch, and all were staring at me as I stood, horrified, in the doorway. All over the white walls were smiley faces, and the same writing over and over, "I'm very angry with you," written in blood. I lifted up the couch seat to look for my pistol, but it was gone. Just then I saw something in the hallway moving steadily back and forth, flipping on the hall light. There it was again, the creature who had tried to kill me the night before I had left. It snapped its gaze to me and moved its mouth into a sickening smile. It jumped up and started to walk in my direction. I quickly turned around and ran outside, slamming the door behind me. I got into my car, started it up, and proceeded to back out of the driveway and onto the road as fast as I could. Behind me, I saw a figure in my rearview mirror running up to my car. Its arms slammed into the trunk, and it proceeded to hop onto the roof of my car. I shifted into drive and slammed on the gas. I drove all night as far as I could away from the house, those dead animals, that thing as Sue. And as I was in the city limits, I decided to buy some gas. Seeing as I was almost on empty, I pulled into a gas station and got out of my car. My eyes widened as I saw the trunk had been completely bashed in. I quickly pumped the gas and left for my parents' house. For months later, I am living in my apartment, dealing with occasional nightmares at times, but could never be happier to get away from that house and that monster that lives there. I just checked my mail this morning and received a letter with no return address. Inside, written on crumpled up paper, was a crudely drawn smiley face and the words, "You can't hide." Story 7. Hunter. The people of Acton, Massachusetts knew the devil walked among them. How else could they explain how routine death was? Their only bulwark against oblivion was the small stone chapel that had been erected in the center of town. It was there that the congregation met every Sunday for service. It was there that the local farmers established some sense of community, and it was there that the people of Acton went to escape the bitter cold. Stone church walls kept out the elements better than rickety log cabins, and everyone in Acton knew to risk staying away from the church when the winter storms rolled in was certain death. Everyone except for Hunter Solomon. Hunter was a strange man in a time when any semblance of strangeness led to rumors of witchcraft and wizardry. A tall, hairy, hawkish man, Hunter lived on the outskirts of Acton in a cramped, decaying cabin. Few spoke to him, and the only person who regularly contacted him was old Nan, a kindly old woman known and loved for her treatment of children. Though many were suspicious of Hunter, none dared accuse him directly of any wrong, due entirely to his immense hunting skills. Every week Hunter would stride into town to leave a freshly slaughtered deer on the steps of the church for any hungry man or woman. No man in their right mind went into the woods around Acton alone. Too many had disappeared when the grandparents of the current generation of settlers had first arrived. The land that became Acton was complete, Healy abandoned. There were no Indians and no apparent trails, despite the rich farmland. Those original settlers had been a hardy crew and hacked a life out of the oppressive woods, despite the dangers posed by the wolf pack that lived in the shadow of Acton. This current generation had learned fear from their forebears, and so, whenever fresh meat was needed, a hunting party was formed to ensure that no man had to go into the woods and brave the wolves alone. Hunter Solomon went into the woods alone. Rumors swirled among the townspeople that Hunter had sold his soul so that he could safely walk among the wolves. Some said that when Hunter had been a young man, he and his father had gone into the woods on a hunting trip where they had been attacked by the pack. Days later, the people of Acton said Hunter had emerged from the woods limping and trying his best to hold his scalp to his head. Old man Solomon was never seen again. That hunting trip left Hunter silent and covered in scars. No one could fight off wolves. The townspeople said the devil must have protected his servant. Few remembered the sociable young man Hunter had been before this trip, but all knew the silent, reclusive hermit who had returned. It didn't take much for the people of Acton to turn on Hunter. When Reverend McGarvey passed away during the winter of 1701, the people of A.C. Ton desperately sent out requests for a new minister. When spring arrived, so did Reverend O'Brien, a red-headed fire and brimstone preacher who inspired a new level of devotion among the frontier fa. Faithful with him was his 8-year-old daughter, a small wild lass who shared his red hair. Her name was Lucy. No one in town knew for certain when Lucy and Hunter first met. All they knew doubly was that Lucy adored Hunter. Whenever Hunter would stride into town, bringing fresh food from his aunt, Lucy would run out to greet him. Hunter always brought something for her, an interesting leaf, a small carving, a poorly made doll. Soon other children started running out with Lucy to greet Hunter. Hunter always had toys for the children, and they soon came to adore Acton's hermit almost as much as they adored old Nan and her stories. Some saw this as a sign that Hunter was, at least partially, a decent man. Others, including Reverend O'Brien, knew that the Satan-worshipping Hunter was corrupting his daughter and the other town children. Reverend O'Brien took no small amount of pleasure from his first sermon about witchcraft. The townspeople, already suspicious of Hunter Solomon, hung on his every word. Vivid descriptions of covens and curses drove the townspeople into a fervor. Soon they began to notice every misfortune. Farmer Jones's cow died suddenly. Little Danny Gilman fell severely ill and died several weeks later. Rachel Jones miscarried. James Sloane's wife was caught with another man and swore on the Holy Bible that an outside force had seized control of her body. The breaking point came early in the winter of 1702, when Lucy disappeared. That Sunday, Reverend O'Brien poured his heart and soul into his sermon, calling for the people of T.H. town to drive out the devil. All knew to whom he referred. The enraged congregation loaded their muskets and lit their torches. It was time to kill Hunter Solomon. It was time to drive out the devil. When the mob reached Hunter's cabin, they found it to be abandoned. Reverend O'Brien and James Sloan led a select group of village elders into the cabin to see if there was any sign of W. Here Hunter had gone, or if he was to return. They found a small cot, numerous hunting trophies, and a set of manacles chained to the wall of the cabin. The manacles were solidly built and showed signs of frequent use. Along the cuffs of the manacles were several thick, dark hairs. Reverend O'Brien proudly announced that the manacles were proof that Hunter had been summoning and enslaving demons to his will. Soon, though, the bitter cold and howls of wolves drove the mob back to the safety of Acton and the church. The second child to disappear was Annie Smith, daughter of Giles Smith, the town drunk. Reverend O'Brien's sermons became even more impassioned, and soon the witch hunt began. Any woman accused of being in Hunter Solomon's coffin found themselves speedily tried by a council led by Reverend O'Brien and James Sloan. None of the accused were found innocent, and the degree that witchcraft had infiltrated the village caused a panic. In short order, Peggy Sullivan, Lindsay Anderson, and Jane Sloan, James Sloan's adulterous wife, were burned. Still, more children continue to disappear, and Reverend O'Brien led his a great purge, claiming the lives of many young women in the village. The townspeople rallied behind Reverend O'Brien, the holy man they knew to be a crusader for justice. Despite their faith, the number of missing children continued all through the long November and December. The message appeared the night after the blizzard. Though all of the townspeople had taken shelter in the church, Giles Smith was the only one who saw it. Despite the poor visibility caused by the snow flurries, Giles swore that the beast was easily the size of a horse. No one really believed him, and the following morning offered no proof of Giles Smith's claims. The heavy snow had obscured any tracks, and Reverend O'Brien was quick to dismiss the drunk's claims. That was, until he saw the door of the church. Crudely carved into the door of the church were 2 words, "I know." Reverend O'Brien turned pale and hurried to his home, stating he needed to prepare the following day's sermon. That sermon was never given. All throughout the night, the townspeople were kept awake by loud, lonely howls that sounded like they were coming from just outside the village. The next morning, as the people of Acton exited their homes in their Sunday best, they were greeted by a ghastly sight. Sprawled on the steps of the church was the mangled body of James Sloan. Reverend O'Brien was incensed and immediately called a meeting of the council. It didn't take the council long to accuse old Non of witchcraft and conspiracy with Hunter Solomon. The remaining children looked on in horror as their storyteller was seized by the council, and Reverend O'Brien sent his congregation out to gather wood for a pyre. Soon they returned and dumped their wood around the stake. Old Non was now bound too. Here, standing next to the pyre, was where Reverend O'Brien was in his element. As old Non sobbed and begged for mercy, Reverend O'Brien hollered about evil, the devil, and all the depraved acts Hunter Solomon and old Non had been responsible for. Descriptions of demon summoning and secret meetings in the woods with Satan drove the crowd into a screaming frenzy. A deafening snarl silenced the mob. Pacing around a house at the edge of town was the wolf. If anything, Giles Smith had underestimated the size of the beast, which was easily larger than any horse. The crowd panicked, some fainted, some fired their muskets, some ran, and Reverend O'Brien stood rooted in place, holding the torch he had planned on using to ignite the pyre. The wolf charged forward, surging through the crowd directly towards Reverend O'Brien. Panicking, Reverend O'Brien dropped the torch on the pyre, turned, and ran. As the flames began to lick up the pile of dry wood towards the desperately praying old nun, the wolf altered its course, throwing its weight into the air. It sailed through the pyre, snapping the stake and sending old nun tumbling free. The wolf lay thrashing on the ground, trying its best to extinguish the fire that was now ablaze. With a desperate howl it rolled into a nearby snowbank, extinguishing its fire, and ran out of town. No one could have predicted that a badly burned Hunter Solomon would knock on Farmer Jones's door later that night, or that the next morning Farmer Jones would gather a group of townsmen, kick in the door to Reverend O'Brien's house, and hang him from a tree at the edge of the forest. Fewer still could have predicted the remains of the missing children were recovered from the basement of that very house. Hunter Solomon has not been seen since, but the townspeople of Acton no longer avoid the woods. Hunters go out alone and afraid. Children play in the places that were once forbidden to them. Every now and then a hunter will hear a lonely howl. Every now and then a child will find a poorly made doll. But no one goes missing, and no more rumors spread about Hunter Solomon.